I went to five petrol stations. No one has a petrol.
This Tuesday, News 24's fielded numerous reports of petrol stations up and down Mzansi shutting shop and turning away motorists desperate to fill up ahead of the staggering fuel price increases at midnight. Despite government slashing the fuel price levy this April, you and I will still be digging deep to pay an extra 3 Rand per litre for petrol and an eye-watering 7 Rand per litre for diesel. Catching up with specialist business journalist Lisa Steyn, she reminds us that among the key reasons why we're experiencing a fuel crisis right now is simply because there aren't enough trucks to ferry fuel to every station.
Very much a sort of artificial crunch at the moment because everyone just wants to get it at the cheaper rate, obviously, given the increases we were expecting and even the increases now. So the issue is really, as I understand it, that trucks have just been unable, the tankers have been unable to keep up with demand. Some guys in the industry are saying, demand is 3 times more than what they usually handle.
Later, we'll look at one of the founders of Islam in the Cape with On This Day in South African History. It's our regular segment.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast channels.
And in Roby's Pointless Braai Quiz, our question is, how many South African restaurants have made the cut to be included in this year's prestigious World's 101 Best Steak Restaurants list? Well, I'll give you that answer a little later. My name's Graham Robenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. Moving to our top story today and taking us through the macroeconomic factors which are driving the current fuel crisis is our specialist journalist Lisa Steyn, live on the line now from our Randburg studios. And Lisa, as we began this discussion, we have breaking news. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has now announced a 3 Rand per litre reduction in the fuel levy taxes for the month of April. We didn't know up until this point what the fuel prices increases would be as announced by the Petroleum and Mineral Resources Ministry, which are due to come into effect at midnight tonight. We didn't know what those figures would be, although we had data from the Central Energy Fund. What are the figures telling us at this time? What is government saying? And is it bringing, the price of petrol and diesel down all that much?
Forgive me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But so we were expecting an increase of over 6 Rand for petrol and over 10 Rand for diesel. So now, because of that 3 Rand cut, we're expecting a 3 Rand increase roundabout for petrol and a
7 Rand
for diesel. 7 Rand for diesel, yeah.
Yeah, so it's 3 Rand, as you said, both 95 and 93, and then 7 Rand, as you say, around 7 Rand 37, 751 for diesel. But paraffin, still, that's going up 15 Rand 60 cents per litre, and then gas, 1 Rand 8 cents per kilogram in Gauteng, and then 1 Rand 23 per kilogram in the Western Cape. The figures are still pretty high. If government didn't slash the fuel levy by 3 Rand per litre for this month, it would have been a lot worse.
We can only be grateful for it, but of course it is still going to have a huge impact. As you point out, paraffin, that disproportionately affects the poorest households in the country. So it's still quite a blow, but government is forfeiting about 6 billion in taxes per month to offer this relief. Well, for now, it's just for the next month for now. We'll see how it develops.
Yeah, of course. Let's hear from a couple of frustrated motorists and petrol attendants.
So most of the people know that the fuel price is going up, so they're all coming to fill up, you see. For now, not they're a bit shocked about the prices that's going up.
It means traveling less, cutting down on unnecessary trips. Sometimes even the necessary trips, we would have to look at alternatives, maybe looking at the taxi, using a taxi, and then cutting down on grocery items, cutting down on your DSTV.
I was not prepared at all, but it seems as if we have no choice because it's beyond our borders, so we have to face the music. But again, it is what it is.
There were calls, though, from, I think, the agriculture sector for these announcements in the fuel price increases to happen a lot sooner, and for these increases to happen a lot more incrementally over time. I sense there's been quite a bit of frustration from the industry at large, especially in the agriculture sector, right?
Yeah, I mean, bulk users, obviously, the price impact is so huge that if you can get your hands on the fuel, you will hoard it. And if you have the huge storage tanks, which often, these large industries do, so it was more about smoothing the shock and trying, if you announce it more regularly, then there's not this, like now, this sudden jump overnight. If you're doing it more regularly, it will disincentivize hoarding.
Just travelling to my local Shell petrol station in Paranorth in Cape Town this morning, Lisa, completely boarded up, closed, security gates locked. No one was there. I wasn't the only motorist. There was a couple of other motorists pulling in, only to realize that, things weren't business as usual. And you can see petrol stations are a lot more busier than usual. People are, rushing to hoard fuel. But the issue is not necessarily supply, is it?
No, it's very much a sort of artificial crunch at the moment because everyone just wants to get it at the cheaper rate, obviously, given the increases we were expecting and even the increases now. So the issue is really, as I understand it, that trucks have just been unable, the tankers have been unable to keep up with demand. Some guys in the industry are saying, demand is 3 times more than what they usually handle. So they just can't get the fuel to the retail sites quick enough.
So not only has it been, this gamut of negative headlines in regards to the Iran conflict and Iran really having a stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz at the moment, US and Western allied ships can't necessarily pass through this very narrow strait in Southeast Asia. But Turkish carriers haven't had the same problem, according to the very latest reports. The US says it will force open the strait at any point in the current coming future. I mean, there've even been talks as we speak, Lisa, of the US sending ground troops into the region. And South Africa is obviously very fuel import reliant. How does all of this sort of factor for us in the long term, in relation to the fact that obviously from a domestic perspective as well, our refinery sector has also been stripped in more recent years?
Yeah, so I mean, there we're talking about the actual physical supply and whether we can get that fuel. And yes, you're right, we are very dependent now on not just crude oil imports, which we always would have been, but refined fuel. But for now, we seem to be okay. The industry is sort of, quite confident that their orders up until mid-April are on their way and have been secured. What happens thereafter is anyone's guess. But perhaps, it is a bit more flexible than we anticipated. It's hard to know. We've never tested this kind of shock really in this current environment where we're importing so much. One good thing is that Minister Gwede Mantashe last week, I think, said, Iran is letting ships destined for us through. Whether that is technically true or not, I guess we'll find out. But for now, supply and volume is not the issue.
Yeah, and I think that obviously needs a fact check from the News 24 disinformation desk. Definitely a deep dive required there. You've also reported as of this morning, okay, let's chat a little bit about the dry sites across Mzansi at the moment. It's very hard to pin down the total number of petrol stations we have in South Africa today. I see estimates between 3,800 up to 6,000 petrol stations across South Africa. As of Monday, how many do we know didn't get fuel in time because of this logistics issue? Do we know the actual updated figures at this point?
A few days ago, the Fuel Industry Association started tracking what's actually happening on the ground to make sure that, what they're saying at a high level is the reality. And so their members are reporting back every day. And that covers about 4,500 retail sites. There are other independents who aren't necessarily in there. So it's it's measured by the orders. Did we order diesel and did it come in time, or are our tanks dry? And then they would count that as a dry tank. So it was, I believe, 146 dry tanks as of Monday for diesel, and 143 dry tanks of diesel as of Monday, and 136 for petrol, but changing all the time as tanks run dry, as they get replenished, and we haven't got the updated figures for today, but it was, of course, anticipated to be much worse.
Yeah, and we've seen that with our various News 24 reporters out and about, speaking to motorists, speaking to petrol attendants, petrol station owners, and a real sense of frustration, a bit of a chaotic time, people feeling like they need to get to the petrol station today before midnight Tuesday. Rural towns are affected a little bit more adversely. How come?
It's a combination of factors. Logistically, they're further flung, so the furthest out often do struggle. Then it's like heavy agriculture, as we discussed. High consumption, a lot of incentive to hoard. There is also reports of like agricultural co-ops who supply bulk diesel, just closing their books. Either saying they've run out of diesel, or, speculation is that they are holding on to the diesel until the price hike, so that they can sell at a nice fat margin. So it's a bunch of things, really.
But I mean, to my knowledge, and help me out here, there's no real legislation or you're being naughty now for hoarding or as a retailer keeping that fuel until the price hikes come into effect. Is that something that, independent retailers can sort of, be punished for or not?
I mean, when I first started looking into it, overwhelmingly from the fuel industry, the feedback was, it's not right, but it's not illegal. If you say your tanks are dry, your tanks are dry. But Minister Mantashe did say that it's not permitted and that they will take action. So I'm not sure under what legislation he's talking about. But, if they wanted to throttle demand, they could have perfectly legally upped the diesel price, which some stations did do, and that would easily throttle demand. So
comes down really to a logistics issue, and that in relation to everything we've seen regarding trucking in South Africa in recent years, and how reliant we still are on it. I mean, it's a whole conversation for another time, right? What are the experts telling you? What is the Fuel Association telling you about how increases may happen in the coming months? And I think that's where a lot of us as motorists' attention will now lie. Look, we're going to get this big increase now. It could have been worse, but what's coming for me in May, June, July as we head to winter? I think that's the big concern.
Well, okay, we don't know what's coming.
Sure.
But we can this is a very high oil price. I think historically Brent crude has only ever gotten as high, not even $150 a barrel. So we're at 110 currently. And one of the things that was said to me around this, adjusting it more frequently to ease that shock, this is the shock that we're experiencing now. Even if it goes up $10 a barrel next month or $20 a barrel, it won't be as bad a shock as this one, which before the minister announced that cut in the levy a few minutes ago, it was the record increase. So perhaps it still is. So yeah, that shock is unlikely to come again in this, at this severity, but the price could still climb. I mean, there's no sign of resolution in the Strait or in Iran.
Let's end here. I mean, you were in Cape Town the other day, Lisa. Traffic is probably the worst it's ever been in Cape Town ever. It might be the worst in the entire country. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it feels like it. Some days traffic is still hectic on the N1 at like 10:30, 11, even up to midday. You could sit for an hour depending on where you're coming from. It's really a massive headache for anybody commuting in and out of town. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, corporates, big offices, they want their employees to come in. Not so keen on the remote side of things unless you're working for a multinational or whatever the case. And our public transport sector leaves a lot to be desired. I'd love to take a train from my neighborhood into town, and I can't do that because my local train station is still gutted. It's still shuttered since the COVID-19 pandemic. So, alternatives are not so convenient when all of us, do rely on our own vehicles to get to and from work.
No. So, there's the fuel saving tips are sort of like, make sure your vehicle's running smoothly, make sure your tires are inflated, take a fuel efficient route, don't drive in peak traffic, all the sort of obvious things, carpool if you can. Work from home would be nice, but it only really affects or would only benefit 10 to 15% of the population. And then keeping in mind that we're now going into the holiday period. So companies might want to wait and see before they backtrack on that, because obviously people are taking leave and things could change. So yeah, we don't have many options, I'm afraid, just fast bait.
Yeah, fast bait. And just a reminder again of those numbers as Lisa brought them from the business desk at the beginning of our discussion. 95 and 93 octane petrol by Tuesday midnight are going up by 3 Rand 6 cents per litre. Diesel between 7 Rand 37 cents per litre and 7 Rand 51 cents per litre. Paraffin a whopping 15 Rand 60 cents per litre. And then gas 1 Rand between 1 Rand and 1 Rand 23 per kilogram, depending on where you are in South Africa today. Look, some relief. I still feel like we're going to get hurt, and obviously this is going to have its ripple effect for food prices. We're going to really feel it in the coming months, and of course we're still also trying to recover from the foot and mouth outbreak as well. Thanks, Lisa. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time, and good luck with the rest of this bumper news day.
Thank you.
And finally,
ending off now with On This Day in South African History. It's courtesy the SA History online database, and we cast our minds back to the 31st of March 1694. Well, he was an Islamic leader, and he was in fact the brother of the Sultan of Makassar. Sheikh Yusuf arrived at the Cape on this day, the 31st of March 1694. That's after previously being banished by the Dutch East India Company. Well, he arrived here on board the boat De Voetboeg, alongside 48 others, including family and followers, and was instructed to live on a farm remotely in an area called Zandvliet, which is, of course, just outside Cape Town. That was all in a bid to try and limit his influence. Despite this, according to historians, Sheikh Yusuf then went on to become a central figure in the early Muslim community here in the Cape. His legacy now spans more than 300 years. Passed away in 1699, and the area once known as Zandvliet is, of course, today known as Makassar, a key reminder of his birthplace. Makassar to this day remains one of the holiest places for local Muslims and is home to the Kramat shrine of Sheikh Yusuf. Well, the more you know on this day in South African history, a special thanks to SA History Online. In our question for Roby's Pointless Bright quiz today, how many South African restaurants have made the cut to be included in this year's prestigious World's 101 Best Steak Restaurants list? That answer is 2. Well, Stellenbosch's Feed restaurant climbed to 52nd position globally. That's apparently up according to our News 24 food team from the 87th position in the previous edition. And then Johannesburg's The Blockman restaurant came in at 98th position. Restaurants were evaluated on some 29 criteria. These included aging, how they've been cooked, service experience, and of course meat quality. Well, if this was your answer all along, congratulations. Well, you score the priceless prize of being the most informed person around the Bright Place, and who better to have the knowledge of the best steak restaurants around that Bright Place. That's it for the Tuesday edition of The Lead. Hit like, follow and subscribe. That way you'll be notified of all of our editions dropping like clockwork Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m. Just a reminder, though, that given it's the Easter long weekend, there will not be an edition of The Lead coming out this coming Monday, but we will resume regular programming on the 7th of April. That's the Tuesday. Until then, my name's Graham Robenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll have The Lead.